The end of episode 3 is finally here. We can get through chapter 10 and see what happens at the end of everything that's been building up this past year. All the plot lines and character motivations in Lefundos, Wintenberg, Dragon Valley, and Policia all come together in an awesome climax of... Oh, you're not here for the story? You just want to know how to beat chapter 10 so you can get your free Moonlight and Mola. Right. Well, here goes then. I'm going to briefly cover the main story stages in this chapter, not individually, just as a whole, only to help anyone that might be struggling to get up to the bosses in the first place. Almost every enemy in this chapter is either ice or fire, letting you bring a lot of ice units to take advantage of the elements present. Bring your usual AoE damage, a solid frontliner, a Soul Weaver that can cleanse consistently, and another unit that will help you out. Top picks for me this chapter are Seaside Bellona and Elena. If you're not lucky enough to have them, Kisei, Luluka, and Yuna are all good DPSers, as well as other non-Nat 5s like Clarissa and Lena. For Soul Weavers, Angelic Montmorency is a really solid choice, and if you've made it this far in the story, I'm sure most of you have her built already. One other thing that I like to note is that there are quite a few mobs that counterattack and extra attacks in this chapter, allowing me to make a special recommendation of Rowana if you have her as well. Put something like Winter's Potion Vial or Stella Harper on her, and she can do just as well as anyone else. Our first character boss is our favorite former minister, Flan. She is ice, favoring the use of earth and ice heroes against her to keep with the elemental advantage. Her entire kit revolves around a stealth mechanic. After being hit with a critical strike, she goes stealth and gains a barrier. This can be very annoying to deal with, as her adds can chip you down if you don't have enough damage or control to deal with them. If she is stealthed when she casts her S2, she applies it to all her adds, giving them attack buff, some CR, and cleansing them. In addition, her ultimate will revive all allies when used, so focusing on her allies then hitting her even when she's stealthed is not very efficient. I find the best way to deal with this boss is just bring Unbuffable and nuke as quick as possible. She has no cleansing mechanics, so using characters like Assyria, Basar, Seaside Bellona, and Lilibet, you can put Unbuffable on her with a D-break and nuke her down before she can even ult. However, if you're unable to put Unbuffable on her, try to use AoE so you can knock her out of stealth, provided you have enough damage to break the shield as well, and hurt her adds at the same time. If she gets to the point where she loses her ultimate, be wary of how many buffs you are using. Usually, it's pretty reliable to stack your team with strong buffs to carry through a lot of these fights, but her ultimate will take these buffs and turn them into damage based on how many buffs you have on your heroes. Either let them fall off or hold off on using your buffing abilities when her ultimate is coming close to being back up, otherwise what may look like a safe run can turn bad pretty quickly if you don't have the damage to finish her off. All in all, she feels more like a stat kind of hero check boss, where if you can't deal with her, you're going to have a really hard time moving forward. Bring Unbuffable, AoE strips, and lots of damage with some solid sustain, and you should be absolutely fine. Our second boss is the new and improved command model Laika. She was the only character of the Policia squad that didn't have an animated character, but after Belian disposed of the old Laika because she cared too much about her subordinates, she created a new one, fully loyal and fully loaded with ways to kill your heroes. Her first skill gives an ally attack buff, shields herself, targets one of your heroes, and gives a guaranteed dual attack from her ally with the highest attack. This ability, as far as basics go, is pretty stacked. She'll simultaneously buff herself, an ally, debuff you, and get some good damage on you with target buff. If your damage dealers aren't well protected, this can chunk them pretty easily. Taking advantage of characters with stealth mechanics, self-sustain, or damage reduction are very useful to have here. Range with Guiding Light, Carrick, now he has some baked in stealth to help him survive, Assassin Coley is also perma-stealth, and anyone that's easy to protect and has no debuffs on their kit will be good here. Think along those lines. Her second ability decreases buff durations on one of your heroes with a high chance to bleed. This attack also has a chance to dual attack with an ally, but is not guaranteed like her basic. Her ultimate ability is a high damage cleave with passive penetration and more penetration based on the number of debuffs on your heroes. It's basically an AoE cigarette ulti. In addition to the nuke, her support drone ad will self-destruct, nuking one of your heroes and stunning them. Cleanse is another large factor in this fight, especially considering she has a passive effect that after she is debuffed when attacked, she will trigger an extra attack that hits two of your heroes, reduces buff durations by 1 turn on them, bleeds them, and pushes their CR back by 20%. If you debuff her at all, this will trigger, and she can trigger up to 2 times for 2 debuffs maximum on her character. This makes it near impossible to maintain a defense break on her, and will punish you for trying to use any means of control on her. The other part of this passive effect is that AoEs against her and her team are reduced by 50%, and reduces her skill cooldowns by 1 turn every time you AoE her. One other thing to take note of is that her pup ad will steal a buff from who he attacks and give it to the enemies, so be wary of buff selection and usage. Single target and cleanse are the name of the game for this fight. Now there is one way to cheese this fight, and that is with Rowana. With so many counters, dual attacks, extra attacks, and the like, Rowana's passive, which gives CR and healing every time those things happen, you can abuse all the debuffs you want, and Leica will eventually feed your team healing and CR. I use Spectre Tenebria for this, saving up a lot of souls in the first 2 fights, then burn, ult for massive damage for a 1-turn kill. If you didn't take Spectre Tenebria from your Moonlight Blessing, or don't have her otherwise, I believe you can achieve a similar result with Kiris. The enemies will just take turns because Kiris doesn't have an extra turn soul burn like Spectre Tenebria does. And the final boss of episode 3 is Belian, Politis' creation in her own image to create the perfect world. This fight, I found, is far easier than both Strays and Faustus in episode 2. There's no crit resist buffs or massive shields to push through to get your DPS in. There's only one thing you need to win this fight, and it's a word I'm going to be using a lot over the course of this explanation: cleanse. Cleanse is the single most important thing to have in this fight. Without it, you will die, and it will be swift and excruciating. And this isn't debilitating levels of debuffs like Strays and his hit down and attack down, no. This stuff will just straight up murder you. Cleanse is so important that some people have been cheesing the fight by bringing 4 Soul Weavers and just spamming Arky to win. That's how important Cleanse is. Now if you want to not spend an hour in this fight, or don't have the means to survive that long due to the infinitely stacking speed and attack she gets, I'm going to give you a detailed explanation of her mechanics so you can beat her as soon as possible. Luckily, the fight starts slow and gradually introduces more mechanics over 3 separate phases, adding more and more things to worry about as she gets lower. In her first phase, AoE is king. She will summon 2 waves of adds, one after the other. While the adds are alive, you can't DPS Belian very efficiently, because at the end of every one of your turns, she cleanses herself of 2 debuffs and gets Skill Nullifier. Take this time to focus the adds with AoE, and you'll get some free chip damage on Belian. Your AoE attacks do bonus damage, and SSB is going to shine the brightest here. This is because Belian's basic skill is an AoE attack that gives her a shield, which is thankfully smaller than both Strays' and Faustus' were. It decreases everyone's CR by a random amount, penetrates defense by 20%, and stuns the hero with the lowest speed, ignoring evasion. I did test it, and characters that are stun immune will be immune to this effect, so Mort and Champion Zerato are both viable choices for this fight. Her adds aren't very different than the other enemies you fought in the chapter so far, so you should be fine to just clear the 2 waves, keeping heroes alive, and all the while dishing out AoE damage in the meantime. I want to mention this now before moving to phase 2. Elena is by far the best Soul Weaver for this encounter, bar none. With enough souls, if you don't use them on anyone else, she has the highest cleansing potential of any character in the game. Every turn, on her basic attack, she can burn 20 souls to full cleanse her entire team. Every turn. And when you see how much cleansing you need in this fight, you'll understand just how good she is in this role. Not to mention, her AoE damage reduction and team healing is really good since every single one of Belian's abilities are AoE. Elena is the best character for this fight, hands down. Moving on to phase 2, after she reaches 70% health, she gets a new ability and a new set of passives. Her first passive gives her CR at the start of every one of your hero's turns, doubled if they have a bomb on them. I guess we know why Smilegate buffed bombs now. With the buffs, you can't cheese them with invincibility to dodge the stun anymore, and the stun is now irresistible, so cleansing the bombs off you will be absolutely imperative to ensure your survival. The next passive is an anti-debuff mechanic. Having 3 or more debuffs will cleanse herself of all of them before she activates her new ability. This ability attacks everyone, steals a buff from them, and has 60% chance each to decrease speed and plant up to 2 bombs that last 3 turns. This skill cannot be countered. This is her bread and butter to ruin your day. Luckily, while the bombs going off can't be resisted, the placing of them can be. Another reason I like Elena here. Her ultimate gives a 2-turn effect resistance buff that can lower the number of debuffs you have to cleanse. Now, she has a mechanic to stop you from cleansing all the time, and that's the effect where using a non-attack skill silences the character, dispels 2 debuffs from herself, and gives herself 20% CR. The silence effect can't be resisted, but it can only be activated once per turn, allowing you to manipulate who gets the silence if you bring multiple heroes with non-attack skills. She also counters buffs from this point forward by limiting the number you can have by 3 starting, then going down to 2 after she uses her bomb ability. If they have the numbered number of buffs at the end of their turn, the buffs are removed, they are stunned, and take damage equal to half of their current HP. This also ignores effect resistance, which means you cannot stop this effect from happening, so be very aware of how many buffs you are putting up at any given time. This phase is all about ensuring you cleanse as much as possible, managing your buff and debuff usage, and manipulating her silence mechanic, all the while chipping her down to 40%, where she'll transition into her 3rd phase. Upon reaching 40% life, Belian will enter her 3rd and final phase. This phase is also 30% of her life, because at 10% life, you win the battle, so don't give up if you're close to 10%, as you could still win. As soon as she reaches 40% life, she will activate her ultimate. It strips all your heroes and detonates all bombs on your team. It's absolutely crucial that your team is fully cleansed going into the 3rd phase, or her activating her ultimate before you're ready can instantly end your run. And not only does it do that, but it gives her a counterattack buff for 1 turn, and if your hero has a bomb at the start of their turn, her ultimate has a 50% chance to decrease its cooldown by 1 turn. Cleanse, 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 cleanse. I don't think I've stressed enough how important cleanse is for this encounter. Half of all her mechanics revolve around debuffing you, which is why the 4 Soul Weaver cheese even exists. She also gets her passives upgraded. In addition to getting CR every turn and double when you're bombed, she also gets speed and attack every time she's attacked. So finishing her as quickly as possible is important before you get overrun by bombs faster than you can cleanse them. Her silence passive also gets upgraded. When it triggers, if her ultimate is not available yet at the end of the turn, it plants a bomb on an enemy that ignores effect resistance. What word am I going to say next? You guessed it, cleanse. If you can keep yourself cleansed and healthy while avoiding the usage of too many buffs and debuffs, you can safely cruise your way through this fight. I used Elena and Tamarin for cleansing, and Tamarin's awesome offensive potential for a Soul Weaver. And then for damage I used SSB, taking advantage of Belian's onslaught of area attacks, and I used Archdemon Mercedes for the Dark requirement to get my 3 stars for the stage. An alternative choice is Champion Zerato, since he has his ultimate for AoE, can counter when he gets bombed, and can be immune to Belian's stun AoE if he's the slowest on your team while sustaining his own life at the same time. Although I would caution against both Seaside Bellona and Champion Zerato together unless you can manage the number of debuffs that they have combined together. I didn't soul burn anything except Elena's S1, so I could have a full team cleanse on demand. Angelic Montmorency, as well as Ray, both have good consistent cleansing, and equipping artifacts such as Wondrous Potion Vial and Stella Harpa can add to your cleansing arsenal. Destina, with her cleanse exclusive equipment, is another solid choice. And to be completely honest, as long as you can keep cleansing, you should be fine. Just manage your buffs and debuffs, having no more than 2 at one time. Be careful of Belian's silence effect on non-attack skills, although with enough cleansing this shouldn't be too much of an issue, and make sure you don't have any bombs on you when she reaches 40% life. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope this is able to help even a little bit to untangle the massive mess and walls of text that are every single boss ability in the game, and I hope you can succeed very quickly for whatever you could put together for your own account. Best of luck to everybody, good luck on your Moonlight pulls, put that mola to good use. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.
So are you gonna die?